Our lock show. We'll be taking you through the day's 3-game NBA main slate. Sure, lots of nuggets, lots of little nooks and crannies we're going to have to hit on over the course of this next hour. Sorry for the delay, but, had some production snafu. It was the beginning of the year, but we're here for you guys as always. I'm Chris Spags, joined once again by my basketball buddy, one of the smartest men out there in the world of NBA DFS, who I've been watching all preseason, all summer league long, Mr. Fast Eddie Fair. How you doing, Eddie?
I'm doing very well. I didn't know you'd been watching. I was going to ask you what you had done with your summer. I would have hoped it was something more productive than watching me.
No, just touching myself and watching, just making some lineups. This preseason not as good for me as last preseason, unfortunately. Last preseason, I feel like I made most of my bankroll for the NBA season in that part. A lot sharper this year, which I'm sure you saw in all your shows.
Yeah, it was definitely a thing. Disappointing to be sure. Still overall good, but not the slaughter fest it really was the last couple of years, where you had people cashing every day. Part of it was us being a larger part of the market, but part of it was also it was never I thought that I was so super talented relative to the field. It was the fact that there just was not a lot of information, so there was a lot of dead money and a lot of just really poor plays thrown out there. But it was definitely tougher this year.
Yeah, but that's how it is. And unfortunately, or rather fortunately, this whole year long, we'll have all your information for all the regular season, and we'll have a lot more data throughout. And, it's a sharper field out there, so you have to be sharper. But one way that you could be sharp and actually save yourself some money in that process is going to FantasyDraft.com right now. The world of rake in DFS is a real problem. I mean, we enjoy playing on all these sites, but unfortunately, they do take a lot out of your pocket if you are a contest winner. Not at FantasyDraft.com, the official home of rake-free daily fantasy. So go to FantasyDraft.com right now. Use a promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. You'll get yourself a 7-day trial over there with all the rake-free DFS you could possibly want in this world. We've had a lot of guys winning over there. Ship my money. Alex have had some great finishes in the NFL in particular. NBA season's going on there right now. So go to FantasyDraft.com and use that promo code AWESEMO. All right, Eddie, we got a lot of value. People in the YouTube chat already asking if we could speak on the value.
Sure.
And we have one player who is going to be pretty highly owned. Actually, let's take it from the top because the value play we're going to get to right away, the value play du jour that it looks like people will be playing. Let's start with the guards here. James Harden looks like the chalk play of the day on DraftKings, going to be also comparably owned on FanDuel. The DraftKings price to me is just, I don't see how you don't play him. I think shit my money said in the deeper dive, he was going to have about 95%. I'm at about 90%. I just don't see how you don't go there. So do you have any reservations at all with James Harden at his price point?
Well, this is one of those times you have to decide if you're going to try to go for the glory or if you're going to, do it seems traditionally and smart. Harden at $9,700 is just well too cheap. The matchup isn't particularly imposing for me. I have him barely the highest scoring player on the slate, but along with Steph and Giannis and most notably Andre Drummond, he's just well too cheap. So that's going to lead to a lot of people starting lineups with Harden, Drummond, getting then into the Curry is less owned than I think he should be. Giannis, Westbrook, and then throwing in some of the at least tolerable value that carries with a reasonable upside. I don't think we're going to get another value day like yesterday, which again was nearly 4 times the slate, where you had multiple guys from Kennard to Bacon to Harrow to none who cost basically the minimum, or none as the case may be, going off and dropping 30, 45 burgers. But when these studs are so relatively cheap, I mean, in a vacuum, James Harden should cost 12.5 on FanDuel and 11.5 on DK here. So it's just very, very cheap, and it's a very, very small slate. So you're sort of going with the nominal plan A of Harden and Drummond, swapping it around a little bit and being like, I'm going to be cute and let one of those guys go. So 90 or 95% I think is fine. That the percentage of the time that James Harden is in the best possible lineup tonight, I think, is a little lower than that. You have a chance a game gets out of hand. You have a chance that just rust starts to go off and Harden slows down a little bit and only puts up, even if he puts up 45, 48, that could not be good enough because you get 54 out of Westbrook and 53 out of Curry, and all of a sudden Harden's on the outside looking in. So 90 or 95% are probably larger numbers than I would roll out there for the amount I would want to have. But if you're building by any sort of score as many points as possible, ignore ownership quantification, then Harden would be the second guy into your lineup. Drummond is, in my opinion, even more ridiculously priced and even a little bit safer, but Yeah, those would be the two guys that you would, I think, immediately fire those bullets at, which leads immediately into the value conversation. But I'll take a second and say that I do think it's a really important night, as it often is on shorter slates, to correlate your lineups appropriately. So if you're not playing James Harden, in your first non-James Harden lineup, have Russell Westbrook. And if you have 5 non-James Harden lineups, make sure you have Eric Gordon in 1 or 2 of them. Capella I would sort of exclude in that specific case because he and Harden have very nice correlation. I'm not a big fan of Capella tonight. There's a few other centers I would rather go to, but build that way. If you're not going to play Drummond, okay, someone else has to do something pretty impressive for that team. So go a little bit crazy and put Christian Wood in your lineup, or make sure you have Markieff in there and Derrick Rose and or Luke Kennard and or Reggie Jackson and so on. So I think it's important where we're looking at, we'll stick with 5. I'll draw the line above D'Angelo Russell and say Westbrook, Curry, Giannis, Harden, and Drummond, guys who project to be the top 5 scorers on today's slate. Whichever ones you eschew in a given lineup, try to cover yourself because someone's going to likely score the points in that game.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I think, you mentioned a lot of good points there about value and how a lot of people will be constructing their lineups. And one way that people are going to be constructing lineups to get value in there is going to be going to DeAndre Bembry at a high volume. He did start in the preseason. He is not starting today. It's going to be Cam Reddish moving into the starting lineup. And Bembry's been a good per minute player. Also a chance he sees some backup point guard minutes. I know that they've talked about Evan Turner being in that spot. And Evan Turner is a direct price point pivot to Bembry as well, which I think maybe makes him a little bit interesting, but I don't know that I trust the minutes load coming up for him. But DeAndre Bembry going to be chalk. How are you feeling about him as a chalk play on a slate where really not a great, as you mentioned yesterday, we had so much good minimum price value. How are you feeling about Bembry as being the value play du jour today?
Yeah, I think he is correctly labeled as the best value play from any safety standpoint. I think you can look at Marquise Chris or a couple other guys in that low 3 price range who you could argue have similar upside. But Bembry's minutes should be secure. There is a chance of him playing some backup point. Again, we saw in the preseason, as you alluded to, that you got a lot of Bembry playing that backup point when Trae Young wasn't out there. So, but he even has some distribution duties when he's playing alongside Trae Young. There's times he ends up bringing up the ball. So I do think it is correct that he, on both sides, being the cheapest of sort of that 4-piece of wing value out of Atlanta, there's obviously some direct pivots to him there, but I don't chalk is obviously a somewhat vague term in the context that it changes whether or not there's 11 or 3 games on a slate as far as what that number is and exactly how high it is. So I think last I looked we had Bembry projected to be about 30%. I think I would probably go over that number if he's in the 30 or 30s range. I do think I have him for a couple more minutes than most people. I have him at about 27 minutes. There's just a number of ways that he ends up picking up some extra time, and they like his stabilizing presence on the court. He does a lot for them on both ends. So, maybe Horder doesn't get his full 15. Maybe Reddish doesn't get his full 25 that a lot of people are looking at. So I've seen projections at 25, 26 minutes. I have them at either 28 or 29. So yeah, I like that. And I suspect at present I would get over the field. Chalk 32% best value guy is really different than chalk, 45% best value guy. And 3 games is very different from 11. So I suspect I would be on board with DeAndre Bembry and perhaps even have a little bit more. He just does enough in enough areas, and that price is low enough, and by extension also the position desirable enough to get a competent play at on FanDuel, that I suspect I would actually be a little over on Bembry, as opposed to frequently there's 7 chalk plays I like, or 7 value plays that I like, I'd much rather play the one who's 5% or 10% on than the one who's 30 or 35 when I have projected a point different. There really isn't someone at that price with that degree of safety that makes a solid pivot there. So in tournaments, but there's certainly no requirement to have DeAndre Bembry. But
So at the guard positions, we do have one or actually two pivots who are going to have some ownership. We mentioned Evan Turner, not going to be too highly owned. Minutes projection, at least for all the ones I've seen, and also just my gut, not the best or most comfortable minutes projection for him.
I have him at 11. So
okay, yeah,
that's not enough.
Yeah, no, I think that's where I have him at 18 from the site that I'm pulling minutes projections from, and even that's still not grading out as a great value play to me. So, I could see that. But also another guy who is going to get minutes. He is a starter for the Warriors now, Glenn Robinson. And I know there's been a lot of talk. I've seen it throughout our videos today, seen it in the comments on my Four Corners video, the short form video I do here on the channel earlier. A lot of people saying this Glenn Robinson stinks, but reality is he can stink, but also there's going to be a lot of usage floating up in the air. The deeper dive guys talked about it a little bit vis-a-vis Steph Curry, and we'll talk about him in a second. But as a value play, would you be willing to go to Glenn Robinson? He's going to be about half his own, a little bit more than half his own. Cheap price as well, and should have some opportunity. Not a great per minute player, but he's never been in a spot where he's actually going to be needed. So is he a guy you'd consider going to as a pivot?
No, I mean, consider, sure. I think he's absolutely fine to play. I think he's the exact same price on DK. And again, he is, I think, $300 cheaper on FanDuel, where much like DeAndre Bembry, he fills that small forward spot. So that's obviously advantageous for the previously stated reasons. But I'm surprised if he gets there more so than a lot of other guys. So looking at the value, these are not all exactly the same price, although I guess on DK, Marquise Chris would be. I would probably rather play Marquise Chris in a tournament lineup. I would probably rather play Wesley Matthews in a tournament lineup, who I just have, I think it's $300 more is what that would run you on DK, but he's going to be, I believe, even lower owned there. So there are other guys I would go to pivot off Bembry before I went there. Even looking, more directly at guys on the Hawks themselves, whether you went with the other DeAndre, if you went with DeAndre Hunter, who again I have projected for a couple more minutes, but almost 3 fantasy points less than DeAndre Bembry, but the ownership is going to be far less. Cam Reddish, they say, is capped at 25. That's not remarkably different than the 28 or so I expect to get out of Bembry. And again, a lot of other people have Bembry at 25 or 26. So spending a few $100s extra to go there, assuming the ownership, just the presence of a minutes limit has people really spooked, even though it's like there's been a number of, this person isn't on a minutes limit where they're just not going to play that many minutes anyway recently. And this is, I don't know how many minutes he was going to get. They're going to... Lloyd Pierce is a good rookies coach. He's going to give these guys a lot of time this year. And it's going to be an exciting team to watch, really. It's a young team. Mm-hmm. So I do think Cam Reddish will start getting 30-plus minutes a night within a week or so. But 25 minutes of Cam Reddish at I think he's 3,600 provides obviously some immediate leverage off of a different wing on the same team. So I would be a number of guys down until I got to Glenn Robinson, but there's nothing wrong with Glenn Robinson as a play inherently unto himself. I have him in the high 20s in minutes, but he's going to be around some guys who are going to have significantly more usage, and he's never been a particularly brilliant fantasy quantity himself. It's not a terribly wonderful matchup there. They've spoken about other guys on his team coming off the bench, so I do think there's some chance he plays in the low 20s in minutes, and I'd be really surprised if he got 30. So I would have him, like, I think I'm on Tony Snell first. I would sit there and look at Langston Galloway and Glenn Robinson for quite a while, just because of ownership. If Glenn Robinson was going to be, 5% owned, we're having a different conversation. But there's lots of guys who compare similarly and are 10% owned, 8% owned. And Glenn Robinson, I've seen numbers in the low 20s. I don't know what we have him at right now. I get starting, but in this case, I would probably look to some other guys first.
We've got Glenn Robinson at about 18% right now. So, yeah, a little bit more than half of where Bembry is at least on DraftKings.
Yeah, Landry Shamet. You could make an argument to me for Daniel House. I don't think I would go. There's enough uncertainty for me in Glenn Robinson and a capped enough ceiling that I think he would be pretty far down my list of Bembry pivots in a tournament lineup.
Also, it's pointed out to me, which I honestly didn't realize because we changed so many things over, because we are, by the way, on Osmo.com right now, running Alex's projections. I know that's something that people have always been curious about with the site, because for a while we had Josh's projections for NBA. It is, in fact, Alex's projections on the site right now. So use that promo code live before lock right now at Osmo.com/join. Get half off your first month on there. And you can also find packages as low as $3.95 a week. But go over there now, because apparently it's on the stat line section of the of our projections page. I was not aware of that, so some things have moved around. But if you are a person like me, even as an employee here, who is unaware because of all the things we're doing here with all the new tools and all that we have going on, the minutes projections from Osmo himself are now in the stat line section of the NBA projections page. So
what does he have Glenn Robinson at? I'm curious. I'll guess 27 or something.
He has 27 on the nose.
Ooh.
Great minds think alike. All right. So good to know. I will update my sheet for that accordingly.
Me and Alex. It's really interesting though. But yeah, there's just a lot of other value I think I would look to, because there's just enough uncertainty there. DeAndre Bembry is an actual legit producer. Glenn Robinson in general is not. I mean, you're looking at a difference between guys who are probably, I don't have these numbers offhand, but I'd be surprised if DeAndre Bembry wasn't in the 0.85 range. And I have a feeling Glenn Robinson, the third for his career, is at closer to 0.6 something. Now, it wasn't a great fantasy conducive environment for him previously, but this really isn't either, nor is it a particularly great matchup. So, little dog may get there, but just on ownership, I'd be looking at other guys. He would fall pretty low for me.
Yeah, Bembry last year a 0.88 fantasy point per minute guy, so that's certainly a much better floor than some of the other guys.
Glenn Robinson, I would guess, is like 0.65. I mean, it's a low number.
Yeah, Glenn Robinson, he was at 0.63, so even worse than you might have expected.
Yeah. I'm still doing very well with my guesses on all these various stats today. So, yeah. So that's just generally where I'd come down. And again, there's some chance it's Steve Kerr. There's random blowout possibilities. More likely the Clippers way. But, yeah. So that's well more time than the Glenn conversation deserved, probably. But
no, I think we deserve an hour of Glenn Robinson talk. I think it's what the people have been looking for. They've been waiting all preseason, all offseason long to hear about Glenn Robinson. And, it's a big move. He's a Warrior starter. He's on a championship.
That's true. Him and Marquise Chris having roles on this team is a brave new world.
Yeah, I mean, they had to scavenge for somebody to play on that roster, I guess, at near minimum salaries. Let's close the loop on some of the guards, or at least burn through some of the other key players. Russell Westbrook, a player who I don't think a lot of the projection systems I've seen haven't projected that well if they're adjusting for his new role and the situation and all that. Price point's not terrible, and you can certainly make an argument with the staggered minutes that the Rockets will be playing, where you'll see Harden on the court alone, or Harden with Gordon and Westbrook with Gordon. You'll see some different combinations of that. I think you can make an argument for Westbrook, but at 30% ownership, not a guy I'm landing on. Is he somebody that you would be interested in, given the fact that it is Milwaukee? It is a spot where he is kind of a leverage play on a chalky Harden who could be even chalkier by the time we lock. Yeah,
I imagine I would have roundabouts that feels to be the right point, because I don't think I'd get up. Now, again, if the field's 50% Harden, and I'll actually guess that we end up over that. I'm going to guess James Harden ends up somewhere in the high 50s. I would have a lot of Westbrook in my non-Harden lineups. So I suspect that's about the number I would end up at. Going into the last couple of years, I was a big Harden-Paul apologist. And again, barring some injuries and missing 17 consecutive threes and some other stuff, I think that team wins a ring. But, when Paul and Harden got together, there was a whole lot of, I don't know if these two guys can play together. And I thought that was absurd. And I think they did pretty great. I'm a little more worried about this matchup, about having these two guys on the same team. I do not think it will gel quite as well. I don't think you get nuclear explosion, but I do think the team will struggle a little bit to make everybody happy. We'll see how it goes, but there was, they got into friction between Harden and Paul over the exact play style and what was going on with the team. I'm dubious about this matchup, and I've been a huge fan of Harden's ability to change his game as he moves from team to team and become more of an assist guy and so on and so forth. But I do have just permanently some concerns about this team.
So how about Steph Curry? He's a player who's at a similar price point, actually somewhere in between. He's the mama bear between James Harden and Russell Westbrook in terms of price of most of the sites today, and a player who should be getting a lot more usage this year. The deeper dive guys talk about it at some length. Adam in particular ran some approximations trying to figure out who'd be the best guy to have on the court and off the court to see how Steph would perform. The end result was that he basically has like a 40% usage rate, a really high assist rate, basically Harden-esque numbers would be the best way to put it. That's kind of what we expected, what we saw in the preseason as well. How are you feeling about Steph Curry in a matchup here where he's probably going to be seeing some Patrick Beverley, who has dogged him a bit in the past? I mean, a tough playoff series last year for the Warriors, tough regular season matchups as well. Is Curry somebody you want to go to today, given the fact that he should have the run of the castle in a way where he hasn't had in the most last few years?
Yeah, I don't find Patrick Beverley is not irrelevant for the purpose that he's not a good matchup, but Steph Curry, especially more notably in the regular season, has gotten whatever he's wanted with Patrick Beverley out there. I'll download it quick. Query on this. That's easier than it should be. Here are Steph Curry's regular season games started. We'll settle it for everybody playing at least 20 minutes. Here we go. Steph Curry regular season games with Patrick Beverley starting and playing 20 minutes in the opposing lineup. Fantasy points: 62, 43, 46, 60, 47, 40, 59, 45, 55, 58, 45. So twice under 45 out of the last 11. And those were 43 and 40. So literally no busts. 0 times that he was held down. 2 60s and then a 59. 5 of those 11 over 55. Like, that compares very close to what he does just in general. Obviously, I could go through and see how many of those had Clay and Durant or DeMarcus Cousins, and that's going to change it around a little bit. But it's not a good matchup for Steph Curry individually, and then additionally against a team that I expect to be formidable defensively. But I think the various vicissitudes that increase his value more than compensate for that. And he, among these others, is relatively cheap. And I'm a pretty big fan just because I don't think the ownership will do him as much justice as he should. I haven't looked at him in a while, but I suspect he's around 30, maybe a little less. Because people are going to Drummond Harden a lot, and then everything else gets chopped up. We have him at 31. Look at this. I'm guessing up a storm.
You're on fire. Starting the year hot.
Yeah. I think I actually looked at that number an hour ago. That one doesn't
I appreciate
count.
Your honor there.
That one doesn't count. Yeah. But yeah, I would not be surprised to see Jan Monster out of him. And again, speaking about correlation, I'm a big fan of having D'Angelo Russell if I don't have Steph Curry. So it's kind of more of a hand-buildy night, or setting some rules in your cruncher if you're crunching or whatever optimizer you happen to be using, where certainly through my first, like, are there times that you're going to have Harden and Westbrook in the winning lineup? Sure, and that's not it will be a low-owned lineup. That's not going to be a configuration a lot of people land on intuitively. So it's fine if you end up rolling that out there, but through my first 10 lineups, I'm trying to go, Harden, no Westbrook, no Harden, Russell because I don't have Curry, okay, don't have Russell in this one. I have no one on the Bucks. Okay, it's worth taking a shot at either Bledsoe or Middleton, because I'm not running Giannis in this lineup, and so on. So
Is Lou Will somebody that you're landing on? I mean, the 37 minutes in that first game really involved, and certainly that's on the higher end in an LA battle, which Lou has always kind of gotten up for narratively. And I think also, if you look at the game logs, he's also played pretty hard against the Lakers. Maybe revenge, maybe whatever it is, an interstadium rivalry for him. Are you willing to go back to Lou today? He projects well, price not up that much. 37 minutes certainly encouraging, and he's had a day off and just really looked really good in that spot in a way where having a little bit of pressure taken off him seemed like to help him out. Just having Kawhi out there as a buffer, even more room to do Lou Williams type things, going left on his shots. How are you feeling about Lou in this spot?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Lou, or sort of against that theory I was just talking because of the really strong correlation with him and Montrezl Harrell. Lou and Harrell are both well too cheap, especially on DraftKings at 67 and 61, I think it is. They both project really well, and they'll be naturally forced down a little bit by all the studs who are in good to great spots or are well underpriced. So if you go, I got to play Drummond, we saw what he did yesterday, still no Blake, matchup with Atlanta is great, I'm slotting in Drummond, and then you likely are throwing in Harden or Westbrook or Curry, at least one other big stud. Okay, all of a sudden you've got, you will just have a lot of the guys in the Lou, Will, John Collins, Montrezl Harrell range depressed a little more than they should be. So there's sort of a tacit implicit vote against all the studs going nuclear when you do that. But I'm a very big fan of Lou Williams at $6,700. I have him for fewer minutes than that. I think I have him at 33. Same thing with Montrezl Harrell, who played, I believe, 38 minutes in the opener to Zubac's 10. Yeah, I think he's a very strong play.
All right, and let's close the loop here on the guards. We have some other guys who maybe are picking up a little bit of ownership but aren't really worth dwelling on. You mentioned Eric Bledsoe as a Bucks play if you don't have any Bucks in your lineup. Derrick Rose, a guy who looked really good last night, or at least as good as he did last year. Not going to get the full run of things he did at points in Minnesota, but Reggie Jackson is banged up, has that back injury on a back-to-back, no pun intended. Maybe could see him have some more minutes. Anybody we haven't hit on who would be a really appealing play to you at guard?
Really appealing play for me at guard. I don't want to answer out of hand, so let me look at a couple things. It's not a night where I have a lot of strong takes. Last night I was super on some guys and thought guys were incredibly over-owned, and it obviously worked out very well, at least for a lot of people. Everybody can't win, but we had a very good proportion of people pick up wins last night. So there's a lot of other guys I'm similarly interested in, and I think I would have a pretty broad pool. And again, that's for one of the reasons, hopefully, for signing up at awesemo.com is I do put out rankings, grade rankings every day for the slate. And among other things, it is also the full list of players I would include in my player pool. So if you're looking to just populate your own player pool. But I have some interest in certainly Landry Shamet at his price. And Pat Beverly next to him. Now, Beverly has not had a number of he has not played well against the Warriors frequently on the offensive end. He hasn't had a lot of fantasy success. I don't consider that terribly relevant, and I do think guards against this team are something we'll want to look at, or at least it's an above average matchup. So I have some interest in, I think Pat Beverly is only 4,600 on DraftKings. I think it's 51 on FanDuel are the numbers. And even if I don't think he necessarily functions excessively well as being an actual functional Curry stopper, I do think it has a decent chance to inflate the number of minutes that he'll see.
All right, let's move on to the forwards here, because we do have some important players obviously to discuss at all the positions, but this one in particular does have Giannis in his first game here. Last year didn't have the best results overall versus Houston, but was really rebounding at a high rate at them that jumped out to me. I think he averaged 17.5 rebounds per game in the two matchups they had. He's the MVP. There are less weapons on Milwaukee this year, or at least less ones that you really want to bank on. I don't know if Wesley Matthews is a guy I would view as an equivalent to Malcolm Brogdon. I think Nikola Mirotic not being there as well is going to open up some things for Giannis in terms of usage as well, or just open up for things in everybody, obviously. And Giannis, you expect to see some improvements as well. Ownership on him, not too onerous. People perhaps not finding it easy to afford him, even though he is really cheap compared to what he was down the stretch last year. So how are you feeling about Giannis at 34% estimated ownership, according to our projections at awesemo.com?
I'm fine with it. The only reason you have good plays sometimes is because sometimes they're just not there. I don't like to force it. Again, there was a hullabaloo, if you will, about me not being on Tuesday night, but I don't really know what I could have done on a 2-game slate. They tend to be fairly thoroughly dissected, and it came down to, I had the few people I spoke to on Twitter, I think some decent takes on Alexander Walker and Melly and things like that, but there really wasn't a lot to be done there, and there's not a ton to be done here. I do think that's about the ownership level he should be at. He is too cheap relative to DraftKings pricing in a vacuum, but he's too expensive relative to, at the very least, Harden and Drummond. So that's about where the numbers should be. There's I'm a bigger fan of game stacking in a limited game environment. If you have 2 or 3 games, I think game stacking is a really, really strong idea. If you have 10 or 12 games, I think it's a really, really bad idea. You should actively try not to do it if you can avoid it. So getting all over that Houston and Milwaukee game and playing Westbrook and Giannis, or Harden and Giannis, I think is a strong lineup composition. There's a positive correlation between having those guys opposite the ball. But that's about where the number comes in. I would take the under on 17.5 rebounds. One of those games last year, I think they played twice. Their cross conference at the most. You did play both games. I think one of them had 21 rebounds, so that's skewing it a little bit. I expect him to have a perfectly good game, but I have him projected just a hair under Harden, who then costs some $600 less. So it just comes into sort of an ownership consideration, and given those prices and those expected productions, yeah, mid 50s on Harden, 30, 35 on Giannis, that's about where that should normalize to. So nothing super exciting for me there. I want to talk about Alex Len for a second, just as a player I like quite a bit. I think if Alex Len does go out with foul trouble, which is a reasonable possibility, Damian Jones would be the guy who picks up the backup there. But Alex Len is the biggest of the guys here. He's a true 7-footer. I do think he does get to play out some run here. Obviously, not playing Drummond is a stretch, but as opposed to yesterday where I was beating the drum to, pardon the pun, play more Drummond, today he's going to be the chalk of all chalk, I have to imagine. So, there's always a little more merit to going a little crazy there. So playing Drummond and Len together makes some sense. Playing on DraftKings, obviously. And if I was going to pay down on FanDuel, he'd be towards the top of the list. Probably prefer Harrell a little bit both sites. Is Harrell he's a center on FanDuel? I'm almost certain, but
I'm not playing FanDuel tonight, but I believe so.
I'll double check to make sure.
Yeah, I'll look it up. You go. I'm with you on Lendo. I do think he's a very solid play. I mean, I really don't buy in. Yeah, I don't really buy in on Damian Jones as the backup there is going to steal minutes away. I think for a tournament play, I get that as a concept. Somebody mentioned it to me in one of the Slacks or YouTube comments today. But I guess you see any value. Alex Len's ownership really isn't as high as I thought it would be throughout the day. So I don't see the need in a Damian Jones pivot. But is that somewhere you consider going, given that Alex Len does struggle with fouls a little bit? I think it's still a good matchup for him. He's going to be close to the rim. They need him in there really, but Jones.
Yeah, I don't think I would play any Damian Jones, but I've heard people earlier in the day allude to that maybe Bruno Fernando gets that time. If there is an issue with Alex Len, I would expect Damian Jones to get the time, not Bruno Fernando. So I was just pointing that out because people had asked about that as a backup play. That's where I think that time would go. I like Len quite a bit. But if I had to play one of Jones or Bruno, I would play Jones in that case. I'd play Damian.
Not a high volume play to have.
But yeah, it's interesting to allude to this. But yesterday obviously went very well. But I said, quote, I don't think I would have Miles Turner in my top 30 centers, who has struggled mightily against Andre Drummond. Last night was, I think, their 16th game against each other, and he was good in literally 0 of the previous 15, or maybe tolerable in 1 or something, and he went out and put up a very fine number. Now, it wasn't relevant because there were several other centers and players who were far, far better, and you wanted Drummond or Towns or Drummond and Towns, so it turned out not to matter. Because I was all over Drummond and Towns, so I was fine at the end of the day talking down Turner. But he went on and finally had a good game. That was the first time he's done that. Alex Len has had several good stints against Andre Drummond. Like, it has not worked out as a bad matchup for him. He gets to be around the basket more. He's had several double-doubles against him. Going into last night, Miles Turner was 0 for 15 on managing to pull a double-double, so he actually rebounds with him. It's not a horrible spot. So I'm and on a smaller slate, I'm well more inclined towards Alex Len than I was to Miles Turner, who turned out very well.
So here, and he's probably going to be helped out, I think, by having Sabonis out there. Even though that isn't a natural compliment, I do think they kind of flow better in their games, and just having a big body in there who could take some of that like Turner, not a banger to me. I think he's better as a stretch 5, stretch 4 kind of player, and I think having Sabonis in there, I think it's going to help him out a lot this year, but I guess we'll find out. I do want to ask you a question about Drummond, because this is something that occurred to me earlier today. Drummond had that massive day yesterday, played 41 minutes. Now he's playing a fast-paced team. Granted, didn't have to travel, which I think is a benefit, but playing Atlanta, who is one of the fastest-paced teams in the league last year, who is going to run. Does that concern you at all? I know there have been reports about him, trying to up his conditioning. He views himself as having to play a ton of minutes this year. Does it give you any pause for Drummond, given how high Leone's going to be? That maybe, Christian Wood is a pivot you mentioned earlier. Would you go on under the field at all on Drummond, or would that be a reason to take some different looks?
Well, it's it should be a concern, because now how large a concern? It's saying it's not a concern would be silly for anyone. It should be a concern for someone. Playing 41 minutes yesterday is worse than not playing yesterday. Duh. I would extend that to the fact that Atlanta, while an exciting team, is not a very good team at this point. We saw them get crushed when running their regular season minutes out by the Bulls in the preseason. Like, it could go sideways in a hurry. I don't think that's incredibly likely, but my concern would be more tied to that. And because he played 40 minutes and some change yesterday, that if the Pistons get up by 17 in the third quarter, he gets a 6-minute shift and not a 10-minute shift or so. So yeah, he's still incredibly underpriced, and I have him at 37 minutes. Like, I think he gets his full amount of time and this game stays close. But there is a greater floor chance because that happens. So yes, if you ask me to qualify or quantify my degree of affection for Andre Drummond today, I would be slightly less excited because of the fact that time came yesterday. He's still so woefully underpriced on DraftKings, especially that it's not an overwhelming concern, but it should factor into your evaluation of him.
Yeah, Alex has him at 34 minutes on the projections, again, which are Alex's own projections at Osmo.com. So go to Osmo.com/join. Use that promo code live before lock for half off your first month. But Alex has him at 34 minutes. And even with that minute projection, which, I would say, if not conservative, at least could be very on the nose, still has him to be one of the best values on the slate. So
yeah, I had him yesterday at 52 fantasy points and change. I had him and Towns as my top two scorers, and the only two over 50. They both ended up over 70, obviously. But today I have him at 47 and change. Matchup is not quite as good in my opinion, and the minutes are going to be a little more tepid, but still, for an average projection, that's what I'm saying. If he played the game 100 times, I think he averages in the high 40s. That's still incredibly good for 8,300.
Let's touch on a couple more highly owned or at least decently owned plays before we take some questions from the premium Slack, which of course does come with that Osmo Plus membership. Let's talk about PJ Tucker. He looks like he's going to be another price pivot to DeAndre Bembry, a little more expensive, but a player who has had some success versus Milwaukee, and you would think they'd want him to shoot some open threes rather than let Harden do it. I mean, Westbrook, I'm sure they would love if he shot some open threes, but Tucker has been a guy who's had some upside versus Milwaukee last year. Is he somebody that you're comfortable with? Because I'm on him a good amount. I think I'm above the field on him right now, but it feels a little flimsy just because it's PJ Tucker and he can always kind of disappear in the background at any moment.
Yeah, I think it's, as always, going to be, an ownership play. He did have the one big game where he played, I'm looking at 43 minutes last year, and ended up with 8 and even 7 assists in one game. So he had not a triple-double, but a triple-7, if you will. So he hit a jackpot at the slot machine. But I don't think matchup ends up being very important for him. With the exception of he's a corner 3 guy. The Bucks really susceptible to giving up a lot of shots, more out from up on the corners and the tops of the ellipse than out on the corners where he tends to really spot up. So there are a few matchups that I do like more for him based on defensive tendencies to give up that lane to the dunker's spot and to not cover that corner. But I'm fine with it. It is a short slate. I imagine he'll be in the, I don't know what we have him projected at. I'm actually kind of curious what we have PJ Tucker projected at. We have him at 21%.
Yep.
Okay. I think it's fine. I mean, if you look at that was his good game last year, I'm pretty sure he had a woeful game in the other one against the Bucks. Let me load the other box score.
Oh. Also, we did just get an ownership update, by the way, and Bembry up to 40%, above 40%, and Tucker up to 25.
That's yeah, I would rather go with Bembry. The other game against the Bucks, he shot 1 for 9, had 3 points, 2 steals, 2 assists, and 5 rebounds, which, that ends up being somewhere in the neighborhood of 13 fantasy points, 14 fantasy points, which I guess is not a complete implosion, but I would probably project him for 35 minutes and 19 or 20 fantasy points, maybe 21. I mean, dude's going to get a lot of time, but similar to the Tony Snells of the evening. So again, if he's that highly owned, yeah, I would pivot away. I would handle that situation very similarly to Glenn Robinson, though I would prefer it to Glenn Robinson just because the supernumerary amount of minutes just gives you a chance that if he's just getting open and making some shots. And again, in the game I just alluded to, 1 for 9 is a poor shooting night. Normally he's going to make several of those. He was 1 for 8 from 3 in that game. So taking 8 threes is pretty exciting. So I'm fine with PJ Tucker. I imagine I would come in a little under the field.
All right, we got a couple guys at forward who people have asked about who are kind of in that same value range. And I think just if we could speed round through them, that might be helpful for people out there. Mo Harkless had that big opening game, looked really comfortable out there, looked happy, flowing around. I mean, he looked like the best version of Mo Harkless from Portland. We also have JaMychal Green in that same game, shot 7 threes in that one. Does seem like he's going to get a decent outlook of deep shots opportunities, and maybe even starts again, because Patrick Patterson didn't seem like the full season starter there. I guess we'll find out hopefully shortly. And then who else? There was one other person. Oh, and Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon's a guy who I'm intrigued by. We talked about him a little bit, but those 3 guys, any of them jumping out to you as somebody you'd want to go to save some money without paying all the way down?
I think all 4 of the players you just mentioned are interested when you talk about the forwards on this Clippers team. I probably in this matchup think it's a little more of a JaMychal Green spot. So at the moment, I would probably rank my degree of interest Green, Harkless, Patterson if I was looking to play some of those. And again, I don't really want to play Patterson on anything, but it's a 3-game slate, so maybe you get some more time there. But another guy who just does not produce a lot of fantasy, doesn't make a lot of shots. P squared can make himself an open 3 if necessary, and will grab a couple rebounds. But again, in that Glenn Robinson sort of classification there.
All right.
But Eric Gordon, I think is a great piece at I think it's 4,300 on DK, and I believe on FanDuel he's a small forward. So there's bits of appeal for him both places for those reasons, where he's really quite cheap on DK for the kind of upside he carries with him. And FanDuel being a small forward makes it much more permissible of a play. So probably slightly more excited about Gordon than those other ones, especially if I happen to have a non-Westbrook, non-Harden lineup in the offing.
All right, and 2 last guys to hit on, and then we'll run through all the questions we have in Slack for the last 5 minutes. We have not touched on Draymond Green. We have not touched on John Collins, 2 guys who are kind of at a tough price point if you are trying to afford some mix of Harden, Curry, and Drummond, or Giannis as well, or Kawhi. Throw Kawhi in the mix, even though he's not a player that I think we're super into. Is there any interest at all for you in trying to get to Collins, to get to Draymond? How are you getting to those guys? How often would you be getting to those guys relative to the field? Because they're owned, but not terribly owned for a 3-gamer.
Yeah, Kawhi makes more sense on FanDuel, where again he's taking care of that small forward spot for you. Both he and Giannis will have inflated ownership there, again due to the positional issues that are created. DraftKings, I would get myself 10% or some such. I think there's certainly a chance that he does something exceptional for you, but I mentioned that would be under the field. You're just a vote for Kawhi ends up being a vote against Harden, Westbrook, Giannis, Curry, Drummond, and I don't think they all don't get there. So it's not just that I need him to put up a decent game and give you 50, which I think I have him projected for 42 or 43. Like, I need him to give me 60, or I need a lot of guys who look like they're in good spots to bust. So I think on DK I saw him we had around 20%. I would come in under that on Kawhi. I slightly prefer John Collins to Draymond Green, although I will say again you want to correlate this a little bit. So if you have no Steph, no D'Angelo in a lineup, I'm a little more excited about playing Draymond Green and so on. But I just in a vacuum slightly prefer John Collins. And as far as getting to them, you need to force it a little bit. You need to be like, okay, I want to, you make your stand. No one is egregiously over or under owned today. I can't, invent an edge where it doesn't exist. I do think one of the important things about DFS that gets let aside a lot is to, vary your exposure based on the edge that exists or doesn't. And there's nothing jumping out at me at present. I'm going into full news searching mode now, and maybe something will pop for us in the next 3 or 4 minutes. But it is not a day, even like yesterday, where I felt like, there was a dozen guys who were way over-owned or under-owned. Everyone's about where they should be.
All right, let's go through these questions here. And again, if you want that premium Slack access to make sure that you get some of your questions answered as best we can during Live Before Lock, go join us right now at awesemo.com/join and use that promo code Live Before Lock for half off your first month. All right, your take on Marquise Chris, you gave that, but Darth Bane wants to know, would you prefer Amari Spellman over Marquise Chris as a tournament pivot?
No. I'm not sure Spellman even plays. And there's a lot of guys going around on that team, and Eric Pascal, I'm pretty sure sees time today based on some of the coaches' comments, and I'm not sure Spellman steps on the court. So, it's obviously something you can do. You hope those guys get in foul trouble and or there's a blowout or something. Like, I don't think on a 3-game slate anyone is really out of play, but I do think that's pretty far down the road. So just understand that you're being super creative there.
Would you go Danwell House or Tony Snell or Cam Reddish if you were completing a lineup for Tyler Reed in the premium Slack?
If I did not have Bembry, I would probably play Reddish. Otherwise, I would play House and then Snell. Again, I'm tempted to. I have not picked Tony Snell over someone, maybe ever. But I almost did it there because there's just enough weird stuff that can go on in that game. The matchup is superlative against this Hawks team that's going to struggle defensively. They like him. He's getting his time. We're dealing with potential limitations for both Reggie Jackson and or Markieff Morris. So there's a lot of ways that, Tony Snell not only gets, high 20s, low 30s in minutes, gets a ton of time, and even picks up some usage. So for the first time ever, I considered it. But I'm still going with Daniel House. But for a moment, I almost said Tony Snell.
Tony Snell, king of club trillionaire. He's going to have those zeros in that box score.
He is. We have a lot of guys tonight with a lot of minutes and not a lot of usage. Him and, Pat and Glenn Robinson. Like, there's some woeful fantasy quantities in play.
Do you have any interest in Eric Bledsoe? I know he's usually a guy that you find some interest in, coming off an injury, though, and, maybe a little bit of a confidence-shaking postseason yet again. How are you feeling about him at a, not an unreasonable price point?
I like him a lot. I think our projected ownership on him may actually be a little bit high. Again, all the numbers spike and look a little higher than you would think. We have him at 19% last I looked. I think that's actually a little high. I think he ends up being 15 or 16. We'll know in an hour. But yeah, I like that play. He is a guy who can randomly go out there and bang you up 50, and he's going to be under-owned, or he'll be owned less than, I should say, Harrell and Lou Will, even in that I'm trying to get to that 6K range. So I'd have some exposure. I don't think I don't think I would get to 19% myself, but I would make sure to have some Bledsoe in my obviously non-Giannis lineups, and the same thing with Middleton, who on this show and almost every other show out there just doesn't get a mention today. I don't mind the spot for Middleton at all as far as how these defenses are going to align. We actually haven't projected as lower than Bledsoe, so I'd probably get to Middleton before Bledsoe.
Who would you find to be a better DK cash play, Luke Kennard or Patrick Beverley?
Luke Kennard.
Kennard or Markieff Morris for a FanDuel GPP?
Morris for a GPP.
Landry Shamet or PJ Tucker in DK cash?
I play Landry Shamet in cash.
Markieff Morris and JaMychal Green or Alex Len and Marquise Chris for a DK GPP?
Len and Chris.
Would you be opposed to playing Bembry and Reddish on FanDuel?
No. It's a 3-game slate. There's almost no time I'll say those two guys who cost $8K I have an issue with playing together. It certainly won't be a 3-game slate, so no, I have no issue.
Do you like Jackson and Beverly together in FanDuel?
Sure. I assume it means Reggie. Am I missing something? They're not in the
I
same
guess,
game.
Yeah,
I'm. Those are 2-point guards you can play on a 3-game slate. Yes. I'm
so off of Reggie Jackson. I didn't like. It took me a second to be like Jackson.
Yeah, I kind of like Reggie. I mean, he's good. He should be out there. He should be playing. And the matchup is brilliant. Didn't capitalize as much against Trey last year as we would have liked to have seen for someone in that position. But yeah, I'm in for that.
And he has seen a big usage bump with Griffin off the floor. All right, we should be locked now. Let me just make sure there's no kind of open-ended questions we can hit here. But guys, hit that like button. Of course, we do appreciate that support a bunch here, especially on these 3 gamers where, it's try our best to find angles, but sometimes you just got to dig deeper. Let's see.
And a couple people sending me messages and stuff like, dude, you didn't talk about this guy or talk about this guy. My 2 responses to that would be, 1, I am preceded by 3 or 4 hours of coverage going through every player in every game. So I intentionally am not supposed to be doing that. Basically, my number 1 goal is to, I guess, give insight on particular things. And for example, like last night where I think this is too high, this is too low, talk about things versus the field that I see are specifically wrong. And then B, which really hasn't come out yet, but talk about what to do when Jimmy Butler gets ruled out, though that was slightly after lock last time, and react to that news. But I frequently will not get to every player. And the other caveat of that is I have ranked every player. So hopefully sign up and take a look at those rankings.
Here's one that's still relevant from our guy Dadler40 in the premium Slack. On DK, can you say which 2 you prefer of Giannis, Steph, and Harden in a GPP?
Again, then sorry to repeat myself for the 50th time, but correlation would matter a lot for me there. I will very slightly defer to Harden and Curry.
Wow. Apparently Alex Len 10% on DK, according to Weaselfish.
Yeah, but let's look at oh my God, it's
Daddy likes
Daddy like time. I was surprised about it yesterday, but Josh was not super familiar. I had gotten my co-host twisted, and I couldn't remember if it was you or he who is more into the
Oh yeah, no, I enjoy it.
the
I
quiz
enjoy the
format.
trolling aspect of the name. I enjoy calling you daddy to get people annoyed in the YouTube. It's all great to me. It's all a blast.
It's awkward.
Let's see some daddy likes. Let's see what ownership that you're most interested in here. And I'm curious to see if Alex Len is in my tournaments because I have an assload of Alex Len.
Sure, no, that's that is exciting stuff. What was I saw the tournaments were pretty good. There's 400,000-500,000, I think. For
the Big Jam is a decent one today. It's interesting because like I like playing NBA on days where there's like an MLB slate or an NFL slate because I do feel like you get a little bit less love and attention. So hopefully that's a bit of an edge. Let's see, Alex Len.
One would hope. We do have football going off, I imagine, in an hour and a bit of change.
Yeah, we do. We don't have a live before lock show. But we do have the shows earlier. I have my showdown breakdown, the short form video. Of course, that's what I'm doing a lot on this channel now. A lot of short form videos. So check that out if you want everything about the Thursday night slate in about 5 minutes flat. But a lot of passing offense that doesn't include Stephon Diggs for me there. And we do have the full stream too with I believe it's Ben and Alex today. Ben Rosso is always a blast to have on any sort of show. One of my favorites that we have on our channel. But they have a full one too. If you want to watch that live before lock show that they did earlier, just watch it now.
I just realized we have Drummond in the early game.
We do have Drummond in the early game. It's gonna be fun. What's it gonna be?
Give me a number. I remember thinking that Alex put a number on it, and I thought it was really big and still way too low. Like it's.
Oh boy, a lot of just. You want to guess Drummond? I have Drummond in the Big Jam, the big tournament on DK.
What did Alex end at? What did we end at?
Alex, or we collectively had Drummond at 58%, at least unless there was another ownership run in between. And yeah, what would be your guess?
I'll go 65.
67.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, there was. Everyone came aboard after yesterday. You're a day late. We got him yesterday at 25. So
gonna be exciting to see Christian Wood go big, go preseason big. Christian Wood in this spot.
It's not. I mean, that's approaching the point at which I'd move away.
It's a lot of Drummond.
That's approaching the point at which I'd be like, yeah, 67 is a number. There's other center plays, and you know that's approaching the point at which I'd move away.
It feels like one of those things where he could easily end up like just getting, I don't know, just getting hurt or just being slow and being sluggish today. And we're all going to be like, yeah, probably not a great idea playing the 350-pound guy who's 7'1" after he played 41 minutes the day before.
Yeah, I mean, he looked great.
He did.
I mean, God,
dude's a post-up game.
To a certain extent, you know, I played up through college, and so you know, I did the full sprints and something, and you know, I was in my early 20s or mid 20s. I certainly could play at full speed for an hour 2 days in a row. So, you know, now that's not playing 4 days a week for 7 months. So like that breaks down after a while, but he's a hoss. So I'm not expecting difficulties, but the game does move. Maybe he'll have trouble keeping up, but I think it's much more likely he wrecks fools.
All right. Do you have ownership that you want to run through for Daddy Likes?
Oh, I thought you were going to quiz me.
I thought you were doing it. I thought I was filming.
Am I quizzing?
We got to get our rhythms back.
We're doing the Spider-Man thing.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite memes. A little bit overused, but I'm ready for it to come back again.
Yeah, it's not shoveling cash into the fire overused, but it's definitely
no.
Something. What's interesting is shoveling cash into the fire. They're both just better options for both of those. So there's a lot of looking in the mirror ones. I think you could. I'm gonna try to popularize the Doink the Clown looking in the mirror one. I think
I like the Joker fire one where he lights his money on fire. I feel like there's a menace and whimsy to that I appreciate.
That's true. It does evoke a full range of emotional response. All right, so I'm gonna go download it now.
All right,
I gotta log in, do all.
Get it, Daddy. People, it's still 1,100 people on right now waiting for Daddy Likes, which shows the brand we've built with the Daddy Likes name. Yeah,
we'll go with that theory. Yeah, there's. All right, so I logged into someone's DK account. Yeah, Alex Len. Is this the big event? Ooh, got it on the first try. 10.6. That's a nice number. Bembry. All right, I can download it, right? Okay. Sorry. I thought the host was gonna take care of this crap.
The host is just making sure all the chat people are happy as always.
How'd we get for a number day? We had a monster. So for concurrent viewers, last year, we started at the beginning of the year and we were, getting 1,000, 11, 1,200. We built and it went all the way up as the year went on. I remember Josh and I were on towards the spring. I think it might have been into March or something when we hit 2,000 for the first time. Concurrent viewers yesterday, we almost hit 2,900. So
yeah, and today for a 3-gamer, we still broke 2,000 again.
yeah, so welcome my friends to the show that never ends. Okay, so we had Drummond on top, not surprising, 67. Bembry second, 37. Okay, good job. Kennard third, 28. I think that's fine. There's no reason to believe that his health is an issue, although that number should have got knocked down a little with both Markieff and Reggie going. Like, either of them out, yeah, I think you continue to goose that, and even with the price not as preposterous as it was yesterday at 3,300, but with them both going, it's still Luke Kennard, and that was his career game literally yesterday. So 3-gamer, nothing wrong with having him, but with both of them in 28%, I think I'd come in a little under. I'd rather have Derrick Rose, basically the same ownership. They're both between 27.5 and 28%. Markieff 23. I'm surprised it got that high. That's fairly sharp. Like, I would have thought that number was lower due to him being questionable, and a number of reputable Twitter sites talking about they may rest him today as recently as an hour ago. So
and playing just 23 minutes yesterday too. I would have thought that's.
So I'm surprised that bounced back up there. I thought it would have been down around 10, and I would, being honest, I would have recommended. Yeah, I like Markieff a lot now because I think he is knocked lower than he should be, and no, that's about where he should be. Jabari Parker, a guy whose name we didn't say, and that's my mistake. That's just a fine price play. I think he snuck into an A for GPPs, but he was on that A or B line for a while. But he is really cheap. Obvious leverage off super popular Bembry. 20%. John Collins 17.6. Daddy likes. Cam Reddish 13.3. Daddy tolerates. Trae Young 13. That's about where that should be. DeAndre Hunter 12. About where that should be. Alex Len 10.6. Daddy loves. Tony Snell, 8. Brave world. Bruce Brown Jr., 8. I mean, the biggest reason to like guys on Detroit is they play next to 30 minutes of Tony Snell and Bruce Brown Jr., both of whom are perfectly happy not to accrue a statistic. Reggie Jackson, 6.45. Daddy loves. Like, it's Reggie Jackson against the Hawks. It's 6-odd%. Like, we all miss that. And it's not like I push super hard for it. Evan Turner, 3.5. Kevin Huerter, 2.9. Okay, you're asking for some love there. Christian Wood, 2.3. Didn't quite get to 4 minutes yesterday, but it is a back-to-back. Could get out there if the game gets out of hand. I probably want to have more than 2.3. Langston Galloway, 1% flat. Thon Maker, 0.72. Vince Carter, 0.7. Tim Frazier, 0.2. Bruno Fernando, 0.13. Damian Jones, 0.1. So people aren't listening to the show. Again, I'm going with Damian Jones more minutes than Bruno Fernando. You don't need either one. Just the little things I do in my head. Svi Mikhailiuk, 0.03. And Blake Griffin, 0.02. Congratulations. You played yourself.
Boy, what an effort by those people out there. So we should talk about the schedule coming up, because I know we'll probably have to deal with some fun chat rebellion tomorrow, but tomorrow it's going to be me and Josh on Live Before Lock. And Eddie, you get reunited. So I think this was a trade-off. You get reunited with your old pal Emac, all of our old pal Emacs, one of my favorite weekend buddies whenever I have to do the streams. You guys are bringing it back for Saturday and Sunday. Am I correct about that?
I look up my schedule. I only saw that I was Saturday and Sunday. I did not see the joyful news.
I believe it's you and Emac. I think that was the point of it. Yeah,
that it's me and the Mac militant.
Yeah, the Rodney Mac reference. Wow,
You gotta love any show where one person makes a Rodney Mac reference with no knowledge that their co-host is conversant and the other guy picks it up. That's some useless pop culture knowledge. Right
Look,
there.
that moment where he was like feuding with Goldberg briefly. I feel like he actually had a shot at being something. The beat up a white boy challenge. Like it was kind of ahead of its time.
The white boy challenge was excellent.
Yeah.
Theodore Long back in his manager days. Not yet. Jazz was part of that stable. Oh yeah. No, that's a thing that really happened.
I enjoyed it. While we're talking about black wrestling characters, this is just for us, I think. Are you watching NXT at all right now that it's on national TV?
I am not. I'm basically between this job and my other job. I'm watching basketball or working my other job. Like I barely see my family right now. So no, I'm doing many other things. Tell me about NXT. I mean, I occasionally catch it. It's a great product. It's basically Ring of Honor, but some brilliant in-ring action in that.
Getting a little better. So they have the thing that I feel like they've done really well is creating, which I think is what wrestling needs to do now, is creating like cool black guy characters, because that's kind of what the culture is. Like we all want to know what's going. We love the NBA. Like we love hearing these guys. Like these guys are the biggest influencers you have. They have one young guy on there who's like getting big. Shane Strickland was his name on the Indies, but he's going by Isaiah Swerve Scott. And people chant Swerve at him and go, "Whose house? Swerve's house." And it's like he's a dude who's like gonna be, I think, a big deal. Like he's got the look. He's like got a fun vibe to him. I feel like I'm a big fan of that, of Isaiah Swerve Scott, if anybody out there cares about that.
Okay. I will look. I have not even heard the name. That's how far I am removed from my.
Hey, you have families, and I'm just here. I got home. I had to go to a wedding yesterday. My uncle got married. You might enjoy this. Got married at Rick Springfield's house because he plays guitar for Rick Springfield.
Get the hell out. Jesse's Girl Style?
Yeah, he's like one of the most prolific '80s acts out there in terms of touring. He's doing 100 shows a year. So like that's why they had a wedding on a Wednesday at the house, because they're on the road every weekend. And Rick Springfield, quite the character, very nice guy. Also loves shooting off guns, like pop guns and blanks and stuff, but was shot guns, and his wife was not pleased in their Malibu home that he was shooting off guns repeatedly because he was hammered.
Wow. Yes, I am on with EMAC Saturday and Sunday. So there you go. You're looking at nearly 300 combined years of basketball watching between me and EMAC. It's old timers day, which makes sense because the weekend slates are like the matinees. So that way he and I can have a nice brunch.
I love a good brunch too. That brunch is age independent.
Some soft food. Soft food. Nothing that's, too spicy for me. And then,
all right. Well, let's call it right here. But unless you have anything else you want to hit on, because we haven't talked in so long. I feel like if we have anything else you want to hit on to entertain the 750 people, good for you people hanging in.
Bravo to you guys. I'll probably do a Twitch tomorrow and do some look backs at the last couple days in the middle of the day where I'm not interfering with our schedule, and then I'll never jump on my own brand / channel and compete with the mothership here. But wanted to today and didn't have time, and just go back and talk about some observations from all the games I've watched over the first. So probably if you're hanging out, I'll probably, I don't know, noon, 3, 5 at some point when the sun is out, I will probably jump on Twitch and talk about Wednesday and Thursday games for an hour. And I'm off to watch Atlanta and Detroit.
All right, so go follow Fast Eddie Furiel. When he goes live, follow at Chris Spags. I am getting worked hard, but I have a lot of content for you across both the NFL and NBA right now. Be back tomorrow with Josh Engelman, Eddie, and EMAC all weekend long. 2 of my favorites to do shows with will be here for you guys. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. Hit that like button before you go, and we'll see you guys again soon. Good luck.